We're in Ottawa tonight speaking one-on-one with the Prime Minister about the state of trade talks with the U.S.
We need a good deal in the right time. And what we don't need is chasing a deal or chasing a small deal.
Nearly 1 year after taking office, Mark Carney cautions against a rushed deal.
Tell me which country you've bumped into that's pleased with their deal.
You don't think there are any?
Well.
What he reveals about his relationship with Donald Trump, including the president's ask for advice. The gunman who stormed a black-tie gala in Washington is charged with trying to assassinate Donald Trump.
This political violence stems from a systemic demonization of him and his supporters.
What authorities say the shooter told his family right before the attack. And what is killing hundreds of thousands of oysters off the coast of P.E.I?
It's pretty devastating, really.
Why it could take years to fix the problem.
From CBC News, this is The National with Chief Correspondent Adrian Arsenault in Ottawa.
Thanks for joining us. We are just steps from Parliament Hill and the Prime Minister's office, where earlier today I sat down with the Prime Minister for an exclusive interview as he prepares to mark 1 year in office. The big issue that's hung over him, why he has not yet secured a trade deal with the U.S. The state of negotiations and his approach to dealing with U.S. President Donald Trump, all part of a wide-ranging sit-down. Key to that conversation, his plan to support Canadians in the meantime. So tomorrow, his government will lay out the country's financial situation in an economic update. Mark Carney hinted about some of what will be in that. But let's start with U.S. trade and why the Prime Minister says he is ready to make a deal now, but not at any cost. Mark Carney knows he was elected in part because Canadians believed he could handle Donald Trump. But a few hours shy of a year after Canadians put him in office, trade talks are strained, and punishing tariffs on industries like steel, lumber, and autos remain. Do you see it as your personal responsibility to convince him personally that Canada deserves some sectoral tariff relief? Because this country needs a deal on that quick.
We need a good deal in the right time. And what we don't need is chasing a deal or chasing a small deal that disadvantages us for the bigger deal. We're ready to sit down. We could sit down this afternoon and hammer the whole thing out over the course of the next 10 days.
Well, you have the grace of time now, but it's not indefinite.
You know, a lot of countries rushed into deals with the U.S. They weren't really worth the paper they were written on. There's a lot of buyers. Well, you can. Well, I'll put it back to you and tell me which country you bumped into that's pleased with their deal with the U.S.
You don't think there are any?
Well, certainly not in private.
In the Prime Minister's office, newly hung photos of year one. Right there, a meeting with the premiers and a reminder, intentions to work as a team haven't necessarily helped with trade talks. Think about some provinces keeping U.S. booze off Canadian shelves, and Ontario releasing an ad using former President Ronald Reagan criticizing tariffs. It infuriated Trump.
Such trade barriers hurt every American worker.
Did Doug Ford make life a little more difficult?
With the ad? Yeah, well, yes he did. Yes, he did. I mean, but he knows that, and Doug, don't yell at me for pointing out the obvious, but that was true.
Donald Trump called off trade talks after that ad, and Canadian financial pain continues, the war with Iran compounding it. The Prime Minister talks of a plan to continue to build up this country, but affordability issues are urgent. Tomorrow we get a special economic statement. Is there something more, additional, new in there that represents economic relief right now?
Well,
because without a new thing, some people might be left with the impression that you feel like you've done what you can.
We're constantly looking for ways to support Canadians, to provide that boost today and the bridge to tomorrow. We need to make it easier for people to go into the trades, young women and men to go into the trades. you're going to see something pretty dramatic in that statement, which is going to address exactly that issue. You have to have some news tomorrow, Adrian.
Some today.
So I've got to leave some for my Minister of Finance.
Canadians consistently rank affordability as a top concern. Many of them will need him to keep that promise. Okay, let's dig into this a little bit more. Catherine Cullen is here with us now, host of CBC Radio's The House. Catherine, what did you make of the Prime Minister's comments about the prospect of a deal with the U.S.?
What is so interesting here, Adrian, is how much has changed since the election. Then Mark Carney argued he would try to get a good deal and protect Canada. Now, as you saw, he is essentially suggesting he's protecting Canada by not signing a bad deal. Now, there's two ways you can look at this. You can say, well, Donald Trump has gone harder on tariffs, really leaned in more than anyone originally expected. So Mark Carney has adapted. Or you can take the view of the Conservatives and Pierre Poilievre that Mark Carney promised during the election campaign that he would deliver on this issue, and there is still no deal. What we don't know, something I was reflecting on from your interview, is what is actually happening behind closed doors around these negotiations. What is the specific calculation that Mark Carney is making when he talks about possibly chasing smaller deals, maybe sectoral deals, versus big deals? How is Carney weighing the needs of specific sectors versus the bigger picture?
So what about his nod to, what he called pretty dramatic news tomorrow in that special economic statement about getting more young people involved in the trades?
Well, writ large, this is in some ways the biggest political challenge for the Prime Minister right now, trying to convince Canadians that the moves he is making mean something in their day-to-day lives. Because, Canadians may have patience on these bigger issues, trade deals, infrastructure, but groceries, gas prices, jobs, those things are very immediate concerns. They're also issues that the Conservatives were very effective at hammering the Liberal government on when it was the last Liberal government, Justin Trudeau. There are places many Canadians are feeling the pain right now, those kinds of things. You've seen some relief on fuel prices, for example, recently from the federal government, but the government didn't lean that much into affordability issues in the budget in the fall, so it's going to be interesting to see how much they lean into it tomorrow.
Okay, we will all be watching. Catherine Cullen, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll have much more of my interview with Prime Minister Mark Carney ahead, including his take on the future of 24 Sussex Drive. Now, Mark Carney is also eyeing future funding for major projects in this country, announcing a first-of-its-kind investment fund intended to give Canadians a stake. Kate McKenna walks us through the details.
Against a backdrop of Canada's first major project, the Canadian Pacific Railway, Prime Minister Mark Carney announced his new plan to make Canada more independent, a sovereign wealth fund.
This will be a Government of Canada fund, but more importantly, this will be a people's fund. It will be your fund.
Carney says the Canada Strong Fund will be a government-managed investment account to help finance big Canadian projects like ports and critical mineral mines.
Many countries that are blessed with natural resources, like Norway, have sovereign wealth funds. Canada hasn't had one until now.
Norway, Singapore, and Saudi Arabia, just some countries that already have funds intended to grow wealth for future generations.
We would say that this is a good initiative for our nation. We need to have that environment to attract that economic investment, that private sector investment into our energy industry, into our industrial industries.
It addresses the problem of the fundamental problem we have of low productivity in this country. And the reason, at least one of the major reasons, is because of low investment and low savings.
Carney says the fund will be run by an independent Crown corporation, but offered few details. Experts say oversight matters.
What you don't want is, at any point in time, the government to look at them as pet projects financing.
Meanwhile, opposition parties question the upfront government endowment.
He wants to put another $25 billion on the national credit card to gamble on a Liberal slush fund that will enrich Liberal insiders.
What we understand is that the government asks for a blank check of $25 billion to invest in what we suppose will be oil and gas industry.
The fund will also include a way for individual Canadians to buy in with something like a bond. More details are expected to be released in Tuesday's spring economic statement. Kate McKenna, CBC News, Ottawa.
CBC News will have special coverage of that spring economic update. Chief political correspondent Rosemary Barton will guide you through what it means for the country tomorrow, starting at 4 p.m. Eastern on CBC News Network. Now, the NDP has lost its only Quebec MP. Alexandre Boulerice officially announced he will sit as an independent until he runs in the next provincial election.
I'm quite sure that Avi Lewis with the team will be able to reconnect with the heart and minds of Quebecers.
So this leaves Avi Lewis, the new NDP leader, with just 5 MPs. 15 years ago, Boulerice was part of an orange wave that swept the NDP to opposition status under Jack Layton. Boulerice will run for the sovereigntist Quebec Solidaire Party. A California man has now been charged with trying to assassinate the U.S. president. The suspect, allegedly armed with a semi-automatic gun, stormed past security at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. Paul Hunter now with what we have learned about his apparent motive.
From the acting Attorney General of the United States, this blunt summary.
Today, the Department of Justice filed 3 federal charges in United States District Court against Cole Thomas Allen. The first count is attempted assassination of the President of the United States.
On that alone, Cole Allen, the California man accused of trying to kill Donald Trump at Saturday's White House Correspondents' Dinner, faces a potential life sentence. Todd Blanche then went on to describe the events of Saturday night. That's Allen after he was tackled. After, says Blanche, he ran through the security section holding a long gun, a floor above the ballroom with Trump.
U.S. Secret Service personnel assigned to the checkpoint heard a loud gunshot. One Secret Service officer was shot in the chest, but was wearing a ballistic vest that worked. This heroic officer who was hit fired 5 times at Allen, who was not shot but fell to the ground and was promptly arrested.
These are the weapons that the defendant had on his person. You can see that's a 12-gauge pump-action Mossberg shotgun. It's a .38 semi-automatic. He had at least 3 knives and all kinds of paraphernalia.
As it all played out at the Washington Hilton, pandemonium. Trump and a crowd of some 2,500 journalists, senior officials, and others had just sat down for their annual dinner. Now, outside Allen's home in California, federal agents seek further evidence against him. Allen said nothing at his arraignment in Washington, but included in the charging documents a note he's said to have sent to his family prior to the shooting, listing grievances against the Trump administration and calling himself the friendly federal assassin.
Good afternoon, everyone.
As for the continuing political violence in this country, the White House press secretary put it this way.
Nobody in recent years has faced more bullets and more violence than President Trump. This political violence stems from a systemic demonization of him and his supporters by commentators, yes, by elected members of the Democrat Party, and even some in the media.
Meanwhile, Adrian, Cole Allen is being held in custody.
And am I right, Paul, that Donald Trump is said to be satisfied with security Saturday night?
Yes, he is. And look, in a way, it was a successful night for the Secret Service. Trump wasn't shot. The shooter didn't get into the room. But at the same time, security protocols for Trump are now being reevaluated with an eye to upcoming events, including the midterm elections, here in a country where this kind of violence has become almost normalized. Adrian.
All right. Paul Hunter tonight in Washington. King Charles and Queen Camilla have gone to Washington. The trip is pretty controversial at home. Donald Trump deeply unpopular in the UK, but for Trump, the king is, in his words, a great guy. And as Katie Nicholson shows us, there is a lot riding now on that personal connection.
A warm welcome despite otherwise frosty relations between the UK and the US. President Donald Trump has been sharply critical of Britain's reluctance to get involved in his war with Iran and its prime minister.
Unfortunately, Keir is not Winston Churchill.
But for King Charles, Trump, all smiles. There are hopes this state visit may mend diplomatic fences.
If we're talking about dealing with those profound differences over trade, over Iran, over other matters, no, I don't think any visit, let alone the visit of the king, could fix that. However, what is important is I think it can change the narrative, it can bring some goodwill.
Outside Buckingham Palace, a reminder of how deeply unpopular Trump and this visit are with the British people.
Donald Trump has actually threatened to annex Canada, where the king is head of state. So I think people will be looking at this and laughing at some of the absurdity, at how we're basically stroking the ego of a man who is not behaving like a regular ally.
The visit could also produce some awkward moments. The Jeffrey Epstein scandal has touched both the White House and the House of Windsor.
Hi, my name's Anushka DeGiorgio. I'm a survivor of Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell.
Epstein survivors have asked for a private meeting with the king, many of them now on Capitol Hill pushing for new legislation, where the king is expected to address both chambers of Congress.
It's something which is, of course, politically sensitive domestically in both countries, and it won't be the king's first preference to really get further involved in that.
Outside the White House's sprawling South Lawn, this Brit pauses to consider the visit.
It's been quite controversial at home, but I think it's important that we do keep up relationships. So yeah, I hope they get out of it what they hope to.
A hope no doubt shared across the Atlantic at 10 Downing Street. Katie Nicholson, CBC News, Washington.
The White House says it has examined a recent proposal from Iran to end the war.
The proposal was being discussed. I don't want to get ahead of the president or his national security team. What I will reiterate is that the president's red lines with respect to Iran have been made very, very clear, not just to the American public, but also to them as well.
Those red lines may be a problem. Iran is proposing to reopen the Strait of Hormuz in return for an end to the war and Washington's blockade of Iranian port traffic, leaving talks on Tehran's nuclear program for another time. But the Trump administration has made dismantling that program a key demand. Now, to a CBC News exclusive, a Canadian man held in an ICE detention center for months describes dire conditions and neglect he says he's endured. And as Michelle Allen explains, he's one of dozens of Canadians in custody.
Here in the Mojave Desert, a Canadian man has spent nearly 200 days behind barbed wire at an ICE detention center. This for-profit facility is run by private prison company Geo Group.
We are prisoners. You know, indefinite prisoners is what makes it worse, with no end in sight.
Herman is one of 58 Canadians in ICE detention as of March. Like most detainees, he has not been convicted of a crime. Born in Winnipeg, Herman moved to the U.S. 20 years ago and worked cash jobs. ICE detained him because he overstayed his visa, and his case is working its way through immigration court. He says the conditions here wear people down.
Some people have just broken down into just blubbering, incoherent tears. I can't stand to be another day in this place, and just would beg to get deported out.
He says he's seen a lot of mold at Adelanto, on the walls, on the bread they serve, and in their laundry, which is often returned damp. Law professor Sherry Aiken says detainees must have access to proper food and timely medical care.
And it's very clear that the U.S. is in flagrant violation of those minimum standards.
Your taxpayers' dollars are being wasted to incarcerate hardworking people.
This congresswoman says the inhumane conditions are intentional.
It's part of the mental trauma that they are being put through to force them to self-deport.
4 Adelanto detainees have died since September. Geo Group told us it provides around-the-clock access to medical care and dietitian-approved meals. Herman says he'll consider just returning to Canada if given the option, but he'd be sad to leave his life behind.
I was just thinking about my homestead. You know, my cats, that's like your kids. You know, my last emotional living connection to my dead wife, you know. So, you know, that's a big thing with me.
With no lawyer and no bail, Herman says all he can do is try to survive. Michelle Allen, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Telecom giant Rogers Communications has confirmed to CBC News that it is offering buyouts to almost half its workers. Rogers will give up to 10,000 eligible employees a voluntary buyout as they cut costs in response to the, quote, business realities of the current environment. This comes after the company announced it is cutting capital spending by 30%. The Prime Minister is revealing more about his approach with Donald Trump.
Lots of people like to be flattered, but he can see through obsequiousness, to use a fancy word for it.
What Mark Carney reveals about his relationship with the U.S. president in our exclusive interview coming up. And
definitely, while Trump's in office, we're not interested in going to the States at all.
for the 14th month in a row, fewer Canadians are traveling to the United States. How Las Vegas is gambling on getting tourists back. 1 year after his party won the election, the challenge Mark Carney himself identified is unresolved. U.S. tariffs hammering key sectors of Canada's economy.
What we don't need is chasing a deal or chasing a small deal that disadvantages us for the bigger deal.
But if the crisis remains, the context has changed dramatically. On the global stage, war-driven oil prices, spiking consumer costs and anxiety. At home, floor crossings and by-elections turning a Liberal minority into a majority. And across it all, the politics, the war, and the trade woes, one constant, Donald Trump. The Prime Minister has a lot to say about him. Let's get to it. So today was an interesting day, right? So you announced this Sovereign Wealth Fund for Canada. It's new. It's an opportunity for Canadians, if they have a little extra money, as you said, to invest effectively in Canada. So that is new. But what about for the Canadians who don't have a little extra money hanging around? Is there anything new coming from
Yeah,
that?
so I'm glad you asked the question because it actually starts the other way around. What it is it's for all Canadians. It's it's the People's Fund. And so what we're doing is we as a country are building again. We're making the country stronger, more independent, more resilient, better future for our kids. And so whether it's a new port in Churchill, Manitoba, or clean energy development off Nova Scotia, or carbon capture in Alberta, all these big projects that we're making happen and make it happen quickly, they're going to make the country stronger, as I say, more independent.
I guess my core question is, tomorrow we get a special economic statement. Is there something more, additional, new in there that represents economic relief right now?
Well,
because without a new thing, some people might be left with the impression that you feel like you've done what you can.
We're constantly looking for ways to support Canadians, to provide that boost today and the bridge for to tomorrow. There will be a series of things. There's a reason you have to have some news tomorrow, Adrian.
Some today.
So I've got to leave some for my Minister of Finance, rightly so. But one of the focuses of the statement tomorrow and the strategy of the government, doesn't matter that's specifically in the statement, is we're building. We're building community centers. We're building hockey rinks. We're building these big projects. Well, how do we get Canadians, as many Canadians fully involved? We need young people to go into the trades, to choose to go into the skilled trades, in order to build it. We're more than 100,000 new over the course of the next few years. We need, as a country, it's a great career if your country's building. We are going to build. Now, we need to make it easier for people to go into the trades, young women and men to go into the trades. You're going to see something pretty dramatic in that statement, which is going to address exactly that issue, but we're just getting started.
So can I hold you to tomorrow, there will be news on something new and more that represents economic relief right now? Well,
we have just put in place big economic relief measures, the groceries and essentials benefit coming through, as I said, June 5th. Yeah. We've just put in place in the last 2 weeks the gasoline and diesel moves. So we have measures. I'll say one other thing, if I can, about this. Sure. What's crucial is that we have a government that is managing the expenses. You'll see more than half of our spending is supporting Canadians. New spending is supporting Canadians because of the pressures that are there. We have to control other expenditure in order to make sure that that's viable. You know, we have the strongest position of the major economies, the G7 economies, It's our job to keep that position. We're going to keep that position because it makes us sovereign. It makes us independent. It means we can help Canadians when we need to. And it means that we can build a better tomorrow.
So you're dealing with realities here that contribute to affordability issues, like the war in Iran,
Yep.
the trade dispute with the United States, that you're trying to deal with it. But I'm curious on the war in particular. What do you make of the president's explanation or rationale for this war?
Well, let's maybe give our perspective on a few facts. One is that the Iranian regime has been the biggest exporter of terror in the world. It's been an active, consistent, over decades pursuit of a nuclear weapon, and a regime that I think by temperament, at least by past temperament, would not hesitate to use such extreme measures if it were. So there's justification for action. Whether that was justification for the action that was taken, we weren't consulted on those. Whether that is consistent, the actions taken consistent with international law, it's for those who took the actions to justify that. It doesn't appear to be consistent with international law. But in terms of some of the motivations for, at a minimum, containing Iran, and this is before one gets to its treatment of its own citizens, which is horrific, but containing Iran, there's justification for efforts to contain them, whether it's diplomatic or otherwise.
Have you shared how you feel about it with the president?
Yes. Yeah.
How did that go?
We have regular or episodic dialogues. I mean, we don't call each other every day, but we speak about things. I'll say this about the president with respect to this issue. The first time I went to the Oval Office, and just for your viewers to set the scene, what happens in those meetings is you get out of the car, he shakes your hand, you walk into the Oval Office and you're in a press conference. So it's during that press conference, which goes on for 45 minutes and covers a wide range of issues, that you're trying to get an assessment of, I wonder how this meeting is going to go. Normally, you have the meeting, then you have the press conference afterwards, so you have some sense. So, but after that, let's call it a press conference, the spray or whatever they call it in the Oval Office, you go and have a lunch with the President, Vice President, Secretary of State, and various secretaries. And at the lunch, the first question the President asked me was about Iran and what I thought he should do about Iran. So this is an issue that has been on the mind of this President, and I would suggest every other one of his predecessors stretching back over 5 decades, more than 5 decades, around that. So now, as I say, we were not consulted, nor were any of the other allies about the specific measures that they took, or the timing, or the nature. And I would say that the extent to which in the run-up to the hostilities, there were negotiations, and there appeared, and we have broader contacts, obviously, that there was some progress that was being made.
So in Saudi Arabia, we met with a lot of Canadians who had fled many regions in the Gulf, right? They were trying to get out and get home. Their impression was they would only be leaving for a little while. This wouldn't go on for very long, that they could go back to Kuwait or wherever. It's still going on. So is there an obligation for Canada to in some way try to help end this? And if so, how?
Yes, there is an obligation. Where we can play a role, we have to be realistic or humble about the scale of our role. So what are we doing with respect to this conflict? Well, with all respect to our Navy, we're not going to send our 21. I told the President this. I said we could send our 21 icebreakers to the Gulf. I don't think that's going to help the Gulf Hormuz.
Did he call and say, Prime Minister, we could use some help, or did you call him?
He hasn't had that. We had a conversation. I can't remember if I'd called him or he'd called me, to be honest. But it wasn't a call where he was demanding something for that. But it is reasonable that we're providing support where we can to resolve the situation. And if I can I make
sure. If I do, I want to.
You can edit this bit out. You can edit this bit out.
Okay.
Okay. But I'll just make a broader point, which is one of the things that this government has done over the past year is we've been broadening our relationships, both with allies and deepening, but also with countries that we wouldn't normally talk with as much, or we hadn't historically talked with as much. Because the fact is, in a conflict such as this, there are a wide range of countries that are relevant to helping resolve it. And if you don't even have their phone numbers, if you've never spoken to them, if you can't engage, your influence is much reduced.
Who are you talking to you've never spoken to before?
So in this, well, I will say who have spoken infrequently is a better way to put it. So the Sultan of Oman would be an example. Our relationships more broadly in the Gulf, whether it's with Saudi Arabia, with UAE, with Qatar, with the President of Turkey, President Erdogan, who is, virtually any situation in the Middle East. Turkey is influential. It also happens to be a NATO partner, but Canada had not been engaged.
When we come back,
I guess I come back to a question about a president who has a very notoriously thin skin. How hard is it to navigate in that space?
more of our interview with the Prime Minister next.
This is Nico, right?
That is Nico. Yes, that is Nico, and it's in the run-up, obviously, to Halloween. And this is Rideau Cottage, which is the permanent temporary home of the Prime Minister. It appears.
Going to see a Prime Minister at 24 Sussex again.
I would like to see my successors at 24 Sussex in some way, shape, or form.
Are you going to fix it up?
I think it's a responsibility of to hand off things better than you found them, and certainly the current state of 24 Sussex couldn't be any worse. It's an embarrassment. There's our Premier skipping over by this,
Yep.
Yeah, great group. Cooperative federalism. Cooperative,
Cooperative, but also independent-minded. I mean, we talked about it a little bit. The ad, not putting American booze back on. How frustrating is that, or how encouraging is it?
Well, I would say, look, they have their own responsibilities, and they're elected, and they make decisions, and sometimes it makes life a little more difficult, but that's...
Did Doug Ford make life a little more difficult?
With the ad? Yeah, well, yes, he did. Yes, he did. I mean, but he knows that, and Doug, don't yell at me for pointing out the obvious, but that was true, but...
and then Davos.
Did the reaction to this speech surprise you?
What surprised me is how much it cut through to the general public and the general public around the world. So I got up early. I was in India, I was in Mumbai, and I got up early and I walked around the block, and a street vendor raised it with me. Like it really did penetrate, and what that told me is, I was saying what people were thinking.
And you're okay with President Trump not liking it?
Well, I described accurately what the U.S. is doing, which is the fancy word is monetizing its integration. So it's using how close the economic ties are to extract from that. And you can do that for a while, but you can't do that forever.
So you don't think that's come back to haunt you from the U.S.?
Not at all. Well, look, I mean, that's reality. What I said is reality.
You talked a few times about having conversations with President Trump. So it was interesting that the U.S. Trade Representative, Jameson Greer, not that long ago, he was on a Capitol Hill hearing, and he said that when it comes to sectoral tariff relief, that is a personal decision for the president to make. How does that sit with you?
It doesn't totally surprise me. I mean, the president has very strong and very long-held views in certain areas, certain sectors, automobiles and steel as two examples. There are more than that, where his view is, I'm going to simplify, but basically should be produced in the United States. Now, our view, the view of the Mexicans, the view of most businesses in those areas and workers and unions is, well, actually, the combination of our three countries makes those industry, the U.S. auto industry, more competitive. We're all better off together. Obviously there's a tension there.
You're talking about a logical thing, though. You're talking about a rational explanation.
Well, no, I'm saying the president has a view, then I'm giving the rational.
Right.
I'm not saying they're not the same, but might be. But is the president going to be the decision maker on major trade issues? Absolutely. I think the president is the decision maker he's the decision maker, full stop, on these issues and all other issues.
I guess what I'm curious about, though, is if the rational conversation and explanation for why they should be removed isn't landing, do you see it as your personal responsibility to convince him personally that Canada deserves some sectoral tariff relief? Because this country needs a deal on that quick.
We need a good deal in the right time. Okay, we need a good deal in the right time. And what we don't need is chasing a deal or chasing a small deal that disadvantages us for the bigger deal. We're ready to sit down. We could sit down this afternoon and hammer the whole thing out over the course of the next 10 days if the U.S. side, which has other things to do, I acknowledge that, had the bandwidth and the inclination to go through it. We could hammer it all out. We know exactly what their issues. Yep. We know, you know, it takes two, but it takes two to negotiate it through, and they're not all the way there.
Is the setback just at the Oval Office? I mean, if you're ready to sit down right now and hammer out.
Yeah, we've been ready. Look, we exchange ideas. There's engagement. There's engagement this week. There's engagement today, actually, at a very senior level. Not me and the president, but a very senior level. So these conversations are going on. But there's a, you know, in the end, there's going to need to be a real sprint, if you will, for the deal. And when that firing gun is set, if I can use the analogy, it remains to be seen. We don't have the starter pistol.
I guess I come back to a question about a president who has a very notoriously thin skin, and any hint of criticism has effect. How hard is it to navigate in that space?
Look, the president and I have a relationship. It's built up over time. I can speak to him. I can speak to him directly. He's the president of the United States. He has a lot on his plate. So you have to pick your spots in terms of focusing on what are our priorities. You know, and here's the thing, Adrian. In the end, we would go back to the deal that we would like to ultimately have with the United States and Mexico. One of the lessons I'm afraid we have to take of the last year, 15 months of U.S. behavior is, unless the deal is aligned and bought into by the United States, it's not clear they will respect it.
I know you understand the man and you've studied him and you've watched him. That's one thing. It's different being right in front of him, seeing him react to ads out of Ontario or, you know, provinces not pulling booze, seeing the effect of those criticisms, not liking your Davos speech. How do you navigate that?
Well, I think a couple of things. One is you're straight with him. You don't want to I don't want to antagonize anybody. I don't want to insult people. You know, I don't want to press a button that causes anybody to be upset. Maybe one or two people max, but you know what I mean. I don't want to. But I also don't want to say something I don't believe to him, right? There's no value. This has been my judgment from the start. There's no value in misrepresenting your position, sugarcoating things unnecessarily, not being clear about where you're going to stand up. We've been very clear about standing up.
Well, you have the grace of time now, but it's not indefinite.
Well, we have, we never have indefinite amount. We will only take as much time as is necessary. But rushing into something, you know, a lot of countries rushed into deals with the U.S. They weren't really worth the paper they were written on. There's a lot of buyers. Well, I'll put it back to you and tell me which country you bumped into that's pleased with their deal with the U.S.
You don't think there are any?
Well, certainly not in private.
Okay. Prime Minister.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You can watch more of that interview on the CBC News app, cbcnews.ca, and on the National's YouTube page. Why are oysters being wiped out on Prince Edward Island?
Probably dumped around close to $100,000 worth of oysters.
How fishers are desperately trying to save their industry. Next. More than a year after Donald Trump's tariffs and 51st state threats began, Canadian travel to the U.S. is still declining. And Sophia Harris shows us Las Vegas is going all in to bring those missing tourists back by taking their Canadian dollars at par.
Hi, great to see you.
Las Vegas tourism officials are traveling across Canada, meeting with local industry reps to spread this message.
We're missing our Canadian best friends. We miss you and we want you to come back to Las Vegas.
To all Canadian residents, we're going at par.
As an incentive, 3 downtown Las Vegas resorts are offering Canadians at-par deals for accommodation, drinks, and gambling.
No exchange rate, all the fun.
But it may take more than pleas and deals to convince some Canadians to return. March marked the 14th straight month of steep declines. Canadian return trips from the U.S. plummeted 32% that month compared to March 2024, when the U.S. travel boycott had yet to take hold.
It's just a scary place that the U.S. is becoming right now.
Artist Bruce Newman used to travel often to the U.S. to paint landscapes. But like many others, he joined the boycott early last year.
67%, that's tariff.
After President Donald Trump started a trade war and suggested Canada become the 51st state.
Definitely, while Trump's in office, we're not interested in going to the States at all.
Many boycotters are still traveling, they're just going elsewhere. Last year, 25% fewer Canadians traveled to the U.S., but overseas trips rose by 9%, and domestic tourism spending increased by 2.5%.
We're seeing more trips to domestic and other international destinations. So the story here is really a rebalancing in where Canadians are choosing to travel.
Newman is considering a trip to Gaspé, Quebec in the fall to paint landscapes.
I miss the freedom of going to the United States to paint, but there's plenty to paint here.
There's another looming problem for the U.S. tourism industry. The war in Iran is driving up jet fuel prices. The result? Higher airfares, which could mean even more Canadians choosing to stay home. Sophia Harris, CBC News, Toronto.
P.E.I. is facing a dire start to its oyster season. Cages full of dead oysters are being harvested, victims of a pair of diseases that are ravaging the industry. And as Nancy Russell explains, there's no easy or quick fix.
P.E.I.'s oyster industry is facing a tough reality this spring. Millions of dead oysters that didn't survive the winter.
Just try not to think about it, I guess. It's pretty devastating, really.
The western part of the island has been hit hard by a pair of oyster diseases over the last 2 years. MSX and dermo are caused by parasites. They're not harmful to humans, but attack oysters, killing them in big numbers.
Yesterday and this morning, I probably dumped around close to $100,000 worth of oysters.
To try and contain the spread, they are getting rid of the dead oysters, big piles in the woods, and even on their driveways. This year's oysters so affected, some growers have nothing to sell.
This younger generation right here, what are they going to do? Like, that's their future right here.
The losses are taking a major toll on P.E.I.'s oyster industry, worth more than $27 million, not just for growers, but also wild oyster fishers.
It's hurting all the little stores, the welding shops, the outboard places, the truck places, the grocery stores, because what's people going to do when all their livelihood's dead?
The provincial and federal governments have offered some financial supports. The industry is also hoping it will soon be allowed to import MSX-resistant oyster seed from the United States. Grower Tyler Hardy is so worried he got his trucker's license.
I was always on the water, and I don't want to leave it.
Even if the imported seed arrives this year, it's expected to take years, even up to a decade, for the oyster industry to recover. Nancy Russell, CBC News, East Biddeford, Prince Edward Island.
Coming up, why a young girl from Ontario received mail from Buckingham Palace. Five-year-old Grace Connell from Ontario sent King Charles and Queen Camilla her artwork, and to her surprise, she got a response. Her royal thank you letter makes our moment.
One of the girls at the daycare had gotten them to do an activity involving the king and queen and princesses. She really, really wanted to send it to the King and Queen.
I put it in an envelope and I sent it to the Queen and King.
6 stamps on the envelope, Googled the address of Buckingham Palace and put our return address. A couple weeks went by and sure enough there was a letter with airmail posted on the front.
The Queen and King! And I was screaming and being really happy.
I just couldn't believe we got a letter back and that it was real. It says, "Dear Grace, the King has asked me to thank you for your splendid drawing." I kept thinking, this is going to break her heart if she doesn't get anything. How cool it is for someone so young to appreciate something like that. I can't imagine how much mail they get, so to personalize a letter back was pretty unbelievable.
She's going to hang on to that. From all of us at the National, thanks for being with us. I'm Adrienne Arsenault in Ottawa. Take care.